Okay, I'm going to get back into this fender project on this Porsche 914. This is the donor part, and it has some issues, but I think I can work around it. First off, you got a pretty big rust hole here. It's missing an ear that holds the bumper on, the rubber bumper. I think that's specific to the late cars and may not even be on the early cars. Also, down at the bottom of the panel, yeah, that's how we like to fix rust holes. We just jam a bunch of Bondo in there. The front side of it, where the front bulkhead has been pop riveted on, so all that's going to go. But the rest of the part looks pretty darn good, and I always like to double check on the inside here because you can really see, you know, rust and massive dents and stuff like this. So now that we know that, let's go back to my car. And this is a big problem. The turn signal hole is just mashed all to hell. I've got some deformity going down the drip rail here. I'm hoping I can straighten that out. This fender may have even been put on here because it's got like where somebody's been drilling on it, or maybe they started to take the fender off and decided not to. Whatever. Looks like we got a little bit of rust down here in the bulkhead. I'm not too worried about that. I think what I'm going to do here is, because I need to salvage that ear, I want to lap the replacement part over. So I'm thinking this is going to be a cut across here, and then I'm going to leave the wheel arch on there, because I've tried to do this before, and that's the hardest part about mating a replacement panel, a fender. If you cut midway into the wheel arch, getting that to line up is really difficult. I think I'm going to get better results by doing like a radius. It's all good metal. Could even be a little bit further out, really. Come up here, then pick a point where the deformity in the drip rail is not as bad, probably right in here, and then come straight over the top. And that should mate together with this donor part quite nicely. Then cut right along the drip rail. That's going to be a sort of a bear to weld, and then again leave on the donor part, leave this tab to lap it, then probably come right here and down, because on the donor part that's all bad metal. So that's going to be a little tricky there. Some of that will be hidden, partially obscured by the bumper anyway. I think the bumper, I know it's got a rubber tab that latches into that tab. So I think that's the best way to go about this. It's going to be quite a bit of welding, and even more so because I'm not using the donor part wheel arch. But I think I'm just going to get better results. Just basically taking out a patch here. Of course, with the turn signal opening intact. That's the main thing. So I'm going to start marking stuff up and taking some measurements, and maybe do some cutting today. So to make my marks, when I started off, I pulled a tape measure right off this point here, went back 16 inches and made a mark there. Then I took a square and put it in that drip rail, right, to get a square line off the drip rail. Once I got up to the top of the fender, to continue that straight line, I just used a piece of construction paper with a straight edge on it and wrapped that on over. Okay, so that gave me a straight edge. Then the rest of the measurements, basically from down here, from right along the bottom of the fender up, and that matches up right there, 6 inches. Okay, just straight across. And then to get the to cut out around the wheel arch, 3 inches, just holding the tape along the edge and making a radius. So I think all that'll work out pretty good. It'll keep me in good metal and good welding surfaces. So I'm going to mark out the donor part now. I was able to get most of that with body saw. Right there where the metal was folded over, I had to resort to a cutting wheel. That edge will need to be cleaned up and bent back in shape some. It's a little deformed. But I mean, all in all, that only took about 30-40 minutes. Good sharp blade. Yeah, that edge cleaned up pretty good. It's a little deformed right in here and still bent in just a little here. I mean, I'm not looking for perfection here, that's for sure. Just something functional. So it's a good stopping place for this evening. Tomorrow I'll do some fitting, cut out the donor part. And the whole fitting process will take 3 times as long. Getting started early, I'm going to move on to the donor part, the donor fender, and trim it out and start fitting it. So what I'll do is, especially along these areas here, leave at least a 1/4 inch extra for fitting up around the top as well. There could be that much difference in just the 2 bodies from the factory. I think these edges, I'll be able to cut them pretty close, and especially this front flap. That'll kind of drive the boat as far as the fitment. That and this bend right here. So those are the areas where I can go right along those marks and should be super close. So let me get out the body saw and start hacking. I trimmed off quite a bit with cutting wheel on a mini grinder. Just goes that much quicker. And now I can start dialing it in with body saw, which is more precise. And then each time I make a cut, I'll take it over the car and kind of check the fitment. And it's just a process. So along this, that's a drip rail where the metal folds over. That's 2 pieces, because I guess be the inner fender laps over on the inside. So cutting that with a body saw would just take forever. I'm trying to be super careful, leave just a little bit of extra material along here. We can dial that in with a small grinder. And of course there's a whole bunch of seam sealer and undercoating all along that all needs to be cleaned up before we start welding. So as I'm trimming and fitting, I got a little leery of the heat of the welder cooking up the trim piece that goes on here. It's just plastic, and that's really easy to get off. It's like 3 screws around the edges of the trim piece that hold it to the cover on the headlight, and then the cover is held on by 1 screw on either side. So really easy, and you can just roll it up with your manual controller over here. I think the lights actually tilt on this car, but this one may be not working. I needed to look at it anyway. Probably the bulb. There's a bunch of garbage down in the bucket. Go figure. Yeah, bit of corrosion on the donor piece around the oval for the turn signal. So I hit that with some rust kill, and of course it'll get primer after everything's done. But I'm about ready to start fitting this part on, clamping it and everything. I think I've got it cut out pretty good. So what I am not going to do is, the original part had spot welds along this flange, but I've already got a couple little rust perforations that I'm going to need to fill in. So I think I'm just going to do a seam weld along the edge, keep as much of that material as possible. I'll start up on the crown of the fender here, because I think that's the area you want to get the most precise, and work my way around the wheel well, making adjustments as I go. Alrighty, I got her tacked on. Yeah, some of them gaps are a little bit bigger, but I can bridge them. It's just really hard to get something like this to fit perfectly. So it'll be okay. Better than what was on there. All right. I didn't even run out of wire or gas. That's quite a bit of welding. Filled those 2 little pinholes. You know, some of the bead is rough, but the grinder fixes everything. It will need some body filler, but that probably won't be me. I might attempt it. I'm not very good at paint and body work, but I got it down to bare metal, and I'm going to put some self-etching primer on there just so it doesn't continue to rust. So yep, a lot better than it was. Yay! All right, that's all for this thread. Thanks for watching.